Really, if you look at what is Circles, it's creating life-changing opportunities, and not just for families who are struggling their way to move out of this situation, but for everyone that touches this process, there's an opportunity to be completely transformed. I mean, how many people in the room have had some sort of life-changing event by being involved with this work? The truth is, we never know what will happen with Circles. If you're really open to what can happen, it will be different than when you thought it would be. True? So you start off thinking, I can help in this particular way, or I'm going to get to know these people in a certain way. It almost never goes that way, does it? So it changes things in a way that you can't control, which is one of the wonderful things about it. Okay, the country's invested in this road out of poverty. You've all seen this, right? It's a beauty. It doesn't actually look like it goes anywhere. And frankly, most across the country, it doesn't. So we tell people, hey, follow this road out of poverty. Well, where does it go? I have no idea. Does it work? Probably not, but send us a postcard. You can't find any program in the country that's being held accountable to helping families all the way out to whatever level that they need. So if you decided I need to make $40,000 a year, $50,000 a year in order to be economically stable, it's very difficult to find any organization in the country that would commit to helping you make that happen. We say, listen, there's a child care program, there's a mental health program, there's a utility program, there's a job placement, but not necessarily job support once you're in. All this stuff, it just comes down in these silos. So it really doesn't work, which is why today we have more poverty than we've ever had since we've been keeping track. I still think the dating services are beating us in terms of helping more people get where they're going. Think about it. 2 jobs is better than 1, and 1 is better than none. And when people find other people that they're compatible with, their income goes up dramatically. Well, there's some good signs here. I mean, in the healthcare system now with Medicaid expansion, you're going to begin to see more people who are called systems navigators. They're beginning to pull things together. We just saw the Bohemian Foundation invested in a systems navigator at the Columbine healthcare system, which is for assisted living in Fort Collins. And we begin to see University of New Mexico looking at the possibility of a couple hundred of these folks going out into Mexico, trying to just put it together for people. Well, that's a step in the right direction. And of course, that's what we do in Circles as well. But who is closing the deal? And what I mean by that is if you can't get to 200% of the poverty guidelines, so for a family of 4, if you can't reach $40,000, it's going to be difficult to be economically stable. So who is making sure that these deals are being closed, that everything comes together? If it takes 7 years, who cares? But at least there's a path, right? Well, a lot of communities are beginning to worry about their future, and they should. So the formula here is the economy must grow faster than the population. If your community does not have an economy that is growing faster than the people in the population who are dependent on people making money, you've got people that are too old, too young to work, right? I'll show you a picture in a second here. Now, this family right here, these are all baby boomers ready to leave the workforce. That's right. This is my brother, my other brother. This is me and my sister. And we're all getting old and tired, ready to quit. And there's 78 million of us, right? This is the year I was born. And you can see in 57, that was the last year when the big hurrah, okay, I think we're done making babies for a while. And you can see that we really curtailed all that activity into the 80s. And now we've got this smaller workforce. This is the first time in our lives that more people are retiring than are coming into the workforce. What does this mean? It means this. There's actually more jobs that are out there than there are people to fill these jobs. It doesn't feel that way because we have unemployment, but the truth is this is going to continue to be an issue, which means that everyone who is looking at economic development must now go to people who are not yet qualified and help them get qualified. This is great news for us because now it's not just a humanitarian effort. It is an economic development imperative that people get qualified and get into the workforce. On the left-hand side is your community if it's healthy. I'm just going to spend a second on this. You've got a certain half the community is either too old or too young to work. Then you've got people who are qualified. In other words, they're in the workforce making money. And then there's a small group of unqualified folks that are trying to figure out how to get into the workforce. This is sustainable, but on the right-hand side, that is not sustainable. this is when communities implode. And this is what our economic development friends say is on the horizon in this country. And we have to change the way we think about things. You can't have the kid across the street not graduate. It affects your own property value now. It's not just, oh, that's too bad. It's like, whoops, this is really going to affect things. Well, take this back into your community. Start talking to folks at economic development, because what you need to do is add circles to. If you add circles to this and make sense of all this and have friends that can help fill in all the things that the system can't provide, people will become economically stable. And the more people we can move from the unqualified workforce into the qualified workforce, the better. Also notice that, see that retirement thing on the left-hand side? These are all the baby boomers that are leaving the workforce, right? Well, what are they doing? Playing golf? That's interesting for a week. But now, what can they do next? Become an ally. Get here and invest in these kids that are learning about the workforce. We've got to get children completely educated at a whole new level. There are not going to be the kind of jobs that they could get without a really good education. So we have got to get behind these kids. And again, if we add circles to the mix, everything is going to go a lot better. So what's the tipping point? What is this tipping point anyway? Rensselaer came out with an article last year, actually July of 2011, and they said that they would put people, let's just say there's 99 people in the room, that's about right, and they said, how many people do you have to have in a room, a network, that hold a completely new belief in order for the whole room to start believing that? So they tested it out over and over and over again. And what they found out, in this room, only 10 of you need to hold the new belief. If you held strongly to the idea that we can and we should eradicate poverty in this country and then be a leader in the world about that whole thing, if you held on to that long enough and talked to everybody long enough, Rensselaer says it tips. It's not like it takes anything more than 10% according to Rensselaer. Again, this is pretty exciting. So think about how many kids are in poverty in your community. And where I live, Albuquerque, 42,000 children live underneath the federal poverty guidelines in just our city. 42,000. That means they're being raised in a household, 4 people making $20,000 or less a year. So what would happen if we committed to helping 4,200 of these children out of poverty over, let's just think, takes a whole decade? Theoretically, everything in our community would change. All of our programs would be coalesced around this idea of, like, we got to help people all the way out of poverty. It's pretty amazing. When you take a look at the study from the Center for American Progress that came out, they said that when children are raised in poverty, as adults, all sorts of things can happen that are very expensive. And it turns out that $500 billion worth of expenses can happen every year from this whole process. Well, if you just divide that up, it's about $38,000 per child. So in Albuquerque, we can estimate that we spend $1.6 billion a year in issues related to letting our 42,000 children be raised in poverty. So what's really unique about circles? You probably get that question a lot if you're trying to raise funds here. And it's community building plus it's a long-term plan. These two things together, it isn't just a long-term plan that doesn't have the community behind it. And it's not community building without the long-term plan. It's both. That's what makes this unique. So I'm going to go into detail about this tomorrow in a breakout session. But what we're doing in Albuquerque with the team of folks that are here, many of them are here today actually, is taking a look at how to scale in these 4 stakeholder groups. So you've got employers. If you wanted to get 4,200 children out of poverty over a decade, you need to have enough employers to say, I will employ people, right? It may take 3 or 4 jobs for every single family to be able to get where they're going. But you can't just, so in Albuquerque, you have work keys, which basically gives people a chance to assess what skills do you have, and can we match them up with jobs out there. Companies can get work keys assessments, and then they can match up quickly with your skills and your abilities. This is from the SAT, folks, and it's a standard that can be adopted in your community. And once you do that, you've got the ability to match people up. Let's just say that 5, 5, and 5 are the highest scores you can get on the work keys test, and you score 3, 4, and 2. And a job comes along that's 3, 3, and 1. Well, your allies and you can sit down and go online and learn how to move your skills up to those levels and then tell employers you're ready. Once you're in, what they're doing in Syracuse now is fabulous with this. Syracuse has placed 28 people into a quicker circles program. It goes 13 days, and then it has 2 weeks of an internship over at the hospital. And so they worked with 28 folks. 27 still have jobs. We still have, one group was brought through this process in April, another in September. The hospital loves this because they're keeping folks. The allies are able to help on the post-placement side of this. So the whole job is being done so people can stabilize. Funders, you have to prove to funders that this is worthwhile. So as we get, right now we have about $7 million a year being invested from about 300 different funders locally. We just began last year looking at how to develop corporate partnerships at the national level to start bringing more energy to this. And happily, Green Mountain Coffee Roasters called us up almost the same week we were about to head over to Silicon Valley and start some introductions. And we now have plans to bring lots of new corporations into this process over the next couple of years. If you take a look at what we have to do next, everybody, to get to 10%, just in Albuquerque, it could cost literally $20 or $30 million to help this many families. In order to raise those kind of dollars, we're going to have to get government and the private sector much more deeply involved. I will say that the research that we're looking at right now says that something like circles, which is known as a complex intervention in the field, the only thing between us and having the kind of impact we really want to make is being able to get the money. If you look around, if you have the right people on the bus, you just need to put gas in the bus. Am I right? Look around, everybody. We have the right people on the bus. This is a great, dedicated, smart, connected group. So we just got to learn how to put a lot of fuel in the bus and get this thing going at the next stage. Doctors are about to sign a prescription saying that if they think that poverty is part of the health problem, they're going to sign it off and they're going to make a handoff to somebody who will be a navigator and work with circles. We are starting to do this design next week with Blue Cross and University of New Mexico. But that kind of a prescription is pretty interesting because it means that everyone's taking it more seriously and that we can actually start to address the poverty. There are people from every state that we're not involved with right now who are trying to figure out circles. We had some folks here today from Kentucky, I think, right, and some other places that haven't started circles yet. We think we can be in all 50 states here fairly soon and all over Canada. I got an email from somebody in South Africa. They sent me a videotape that was in Afrikaans. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Subtitled, right? They've been doing circles for 3 years. They've been bootlegging it off the website. It's hilarious, and I loved it, you know. They said, we got your book. We looked on the website. We just figured it all out. Now we'd like to formalize it. And they sent me 18 happy people who have been through circles, you know, just all speaking their native tongue and subtitled. It was really quite wonderful. So let me leave you with this idea. I mean, what would it be like? I mean, can you even imagine this North America without so much poverty? Can we actually see that? What that would feel like, what that would be like? It would be so amazing. If we can get 1.6 million children out of poverty through all sorts of partnerships that we would create, through all the inspiration that we would create with our work, when that happens, this country will never be the same. It will not go back. We'll look backwards and say, boy, remember when we used to do it that way? Why would we do it that way? So as you think about what's next, I would just say be open to the opportunity to share this story with more and more people. Make the uncomfortable task of building relationships with people who make more money, who have more money. This is what Circles is about. We're asking people to get uncomfortable in these new relationships. But there's a lot of folks with a lot of money on the sidelines that are not involved in these kind of efforts. But when you tell people, listen, if we could just spend this much, we would save this much more money and change the lives of these children forever. How many children do you want to get out of poverty? That's the question to be asking people next. And thank you all. Yeah. And thank you all for being here.